I welcome you all to the module 31st of the course of UN SDGs. In this, we are going to cover case studies from India, implementation at national level and national reports. So let's see case studies from India. India has made progress towards achieving the sustainable development goals, but there are still some challenges to be addressed. According to the National Voluntary Review report submitted by the Government of India to the United Nations in year 2020, India has made significant progress in several SDGs, including SDG 1 No Poverty. India has reduced the poverty rate from 21.9% in year 2011-12 to 13.4% in year 2015-16. That's a good reduction. If you see, almost 22% to 13.4. SDG 2 Zero Hunger. India has achieved near universal coverage of food security programs and increased the coverage of rural electrification and clean energy, which will help support sustainable agriculture. SDG 3 Good Health and Well-being. India has achieved a significant reduction in infant and maternal mortality rates and has made progress in controlling the spread of communicable diseases such as malaria and tuberculosis. SDG 6 Clean Water and Sanitation. India has made progress in increasing access to clean water and sanitation facilities, with over 95% of households having access to improved sanitation facilities. Right? So that's a good growth. However, India still faces challenges in achieving some of the SDGs, particularly in areas such as SDG 4. Quality education. India still struggles with low enrollment and high dropout rates in primary and secondary education, as well as a shortage of trained teachers and quality educational facilities. Well, I would like to mention one example over here. You may be aware of midday meal scheme, in schools, right? So earlier, what used to happen, a number of students actually used to, like deregister or stop coming, from the schools to schools, because their families were not able to, like meet the, like both ends, on daily basis, and the parents used to send, like these kids to, like some petty, like works, and yeah, to earn even whatever they can, like 10, 20, 50, 100, whatever. So this used to take out, like the opportunity of education, from these kids. So government actually came with this scheme, midday meal scheme, where free, nutritious and sumptuous, at least one meal lunch is provided in these schools, so that like such, like a kids, at least they can have, like a one meal in the proper, nutrition and all of that, and their parents do not have to worry about, at least one meal, per day, right? And this has actually resulted into, like a tremendous, like a return of, like a such students to the school, back to school, and this scheme has registered a tremendous, like a growth. You may be aware of, I think, several state governments, and other, like a private, like organizations also are running this, like a scheme in their schools, and the leading one, among this is one NGO called, like Akshay Patra, right? So Akshay Patra is the one, like a organization, an NGO, which has actually taken up, like this work, and is supplying, like a midday meals to, like a thousands and lakhs of schools, every day across India, different states, serving, multiple, like a crores of, like meals every day, right? So that's a huge, like assignment taken up by this, like an NGO for this. So in a way, if you see how such kind of initiatives are going to help, like our next generation, our, like a kids, to grow into an educated, like adults for tomorrow, right? So more number of educated people, more productive, they will be, if they want to go in some service, if they want to go in their own entrepreneurial works, or even if they want to do agriculture, with knowledge of school and college, they will be in a much better position to handle, whatever they are doing, right? So that's the best part. So quality education must be actually promoted, and I would definitely support, education at all levels, must be made, like a free of cost available to every citizen, every kid, every child of the country. because like a situations what we saw over here, some families which are unable to send their like a kids for like a money related like issue is one of the most unfortunate things which can happen in this point of time, in this age, right? So we must actually come up with such a model where nobody gets deprived of education because of any XYZ reason. Another like example I would like to quote, the dropout rate of like a girl kids from a girl students from the schools was the absence of like a toilets in the like their school premises, right? And nobody noticed initially, but this actually became a major like issue, and a lot of girl actually children, they actually dropped out of school. Okay, and lately it was noticed, and several state governments, central governments, and many other NGOs, philanthropic organizations, they came together and they have built a big number of like toilets across schools. Well, it is still not complete, I'm not saying that, but at least the situation is improving. There is this awareness which has also helped bringing like a specifically girl children back to school. So such initiatives are like definitely needed, and for that one needs a like a keen observation at ground level, right? So this observation, what is the root cause, like this like a meal related, or like a toilet and like amenities related, or any other like a such like a thing must be actually dealt with like very efficiently to bring like a kids back to school, right? So moving on to SDG 5, gender equality. India still faces a significant gender gap in areas such as education, employment, political representation, and has a high rate of violence against women and girls. So this must improve. In the recent years there are several rules and regulations which have come up helping like a such like things. Plus wide attention to such issues is also one of the like regions which is going to help reduce like such cases. SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. India still faces challenges in creating decent work opportunities, particularly for women and marginalized communities, and in addressing informality in labor market. SDG 13, climate action. India faces significant challenges in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and adapting to the impacts of climate change, particularly in terms of air and water pollution, and in protecting the natural resources. Well, under this head, it is essential to mention, like a per capita, emissions, if you see from India, is relatively much lesser, even lesser than the global average. Okay, so per capita emissions are one very important things. Even if it as a whole, it may be like emitting like a high volume, but per capita, if you see, is still like a very low, which is appreciable. Definitely we have like this target of reducing our overall emissions also. Okay, but there is a like a kind of a silver lining that it is not too bad, right? So the countries where per capita emissions are very high, they must actually like bring like severe changes in their like emissions immediately. Yeah, so this thing. So let me give you some case studies. So the first one here is National Clean Energy Fund. In order to achieve its national goal of becoming a leading global player in the clean energy sector, India is investing in renewable energy projects. The National Clean Energy Fund (NCEF) was created to support this effort. The NCEF was created in 2017 and has a total corpus of $27 billion. It is split into two funds, the Clean Energy Investment Fund (CEIF) and the Clean Energy Development Fund (CEDF). The CEIF invests in renewable energy projects while CEDF provides funding for clean energy infrastructure and other projects that support the development of the clean energy sector. The NCEF is modeled after the United States Energy Investment Tax Credit (EITC) program. The EITC is a tax incentive that helps to support renewable energy projects. India is hoping that the NCEF will have a similar effect on the development of the clean energy sector. The NCEF is an important tool for the Government of India to support the development of the clean energy sector. It is modeled after the United States Energy Investment Tax Credit (EITC) program, and it has a total corpus of $27 billion US. Case studies: green buildings, a path to sustainable society. So how green buildings actually also can contribute? Well, you may be aware of like a roughly 40% of the world's resources and energy also, right, is consumed by buildings, right? And this is the single largest like a sector which consumes like so much of like a quantum of resources and energy both, right? So any improvement in this is going to bring, like a significant, like an improvement in the overall results, right? That is why it is essential to focus on buildings to make them green and rather sustainable buildings. India is one of the world's fastest growing economies and is expected to continue growing at a rate of over 7% annually through 2025. The Indian government has made environmental protection a top priority and is investing in clean energy and green infrastructure. The country is home to some of the world's most iconic green buildings, including Indira Gandhi National Centre for the Arts in New Delhi, the Pragati Maidan in Bombay, and the Jawaharlal Nehru National Solar Mission Centre in Ujjain. There is a growing demand for green buildings in India, and the country is already home to a large number of green building certifications. So these are the efforts you can see. Well, these are just like a few like countable like efforts, but there are like a huge number of like efforts being put up by central governments, state governments, NGOs, like other research organizations and many other like institutions for like attaining sustainable development. So this is one case study. It is available like over internet. You can download like this like a study. You can see the detail over here. This is released by BIS, right? So it talks about like access to electricity to LVDC Indian standards, so and so, distribution system guidelines, right? So yeah, country India at national level, SDG addressed, SDG 7, affordable and clean energy. So some of the salient features you can see over here: 48 volt like a bus voltage, a nominal 5 ampere max per circuit, no limit to number of circuits, distribution topology similar to AC distribution, AC wiring conductors of 1.5 square millimeter, 2.5 square meter, 4 square millimeter. AC overcurrent devices can be used and coexistence of AC. Well, in a summary, I'll tell you like what is happening in this like a case study is the promotion of like a direct current DC, like AC DC. We know two formats of like electricity, right? So currently in India AC is prevalent one, okay, but this case study actually talks about promoting like a direct current, and it has like undertaking this case study that the distribution of DC is going to bring like a more efficiency in the society, right? You may be aware some of the countries across the world like US, they have like these DC like electricity supply in the retail, right? So on the similar lines, this analysis was done by these set of researchers, and they came up with this overall like a goal that it is going to help on the SDG 7, right? So yeah, you can go in detail for this. You may download this case study from internet and can read it. Yeah, another example is about polio scenario in India. Like polio is one of the like situation conditions it's caused by a virus, this polio virus, which renders a person's like a physical capability is compromised, right? Either like hands, legs, or maybe other parts of the body. But in the last several years, from like if you see this, in 1988 India had an estimated 2 lakh polio cases per year and was one of the last countries to track and report cases of polio. Since then, the country consistently improved its polio vaccination and preventive healthcare programs. The polio program's success can be attributed to motivated central leadership combined with comprehensive local commitment. By 2014, the WHO, World Health Organization, declared India to be polio free. Right? So the persistent efforts across several decades, several years has brought actually like this fruit that there are perhaps like a no like a polio cases in India anymore. Well, it's a target like hard to reach, every child unvaccinated for polio in India, okay? So we must actually vaccinate like those kids. Key takeaways here: the elimination of polio in India has had a lasting impact on the country. Not only has it served a proof that disease elimination in such a large country is possible, but many of the strategies that were developed throughout the years created an outline for future vaccination efforts. Here are some of the lessons that polio elimination has taught to the global community. The first one: India employed a holistic approach to healthcare by addressing a broad range of health concerns in addition to polio vaccinations, thus ensuring uptake from hard to reach populations who may otherwise not think of polio as an urgent matter. Second, Non-state actors were invaluable in the funding, planning and detailed implementation of polio eradication in India. While these organizations influenced decisions, the Indian government had final decision-making power. Polio eradication required a strong government willing to spend resources on these strategies. Third, initially there was a lack of accurate data reporting polio vaccinations. India began to use microplans, a house-by-house representation of demographic and vaccination data to inform the polio vaccination strategy. Right? Fourth one, policy planners realized that it was easier to assess vaccine hesitancy when participants identified with the community health workers, whether they by gender representation, religion, or caste. So the next, like a case study we have about the Aadhaar identification program, providing proof of identity to like over a billion people. UIDAI. You may be aware of Unique Identification Authority of India, right? So Aadhaar you may have heard of, or maybe you are already registered on Aadhaar, most likely, because majority of the Indians are like already registered on Aadhaar, and Aadhaar is a biometric identification system, to identify the citizenship, with the biological, identification marks, whether like a fingerprints or maybe like a cornea or many other. Based on that, one can identify the person's identity, right? So India sought to provide a unique, non-duplicable and fraud-resistant proof of identity to every resident. Population approx now 1.4 billion. Starting in 2009, India centralized digital identification through the Aadhaar program. The federal government navigated reaching all of India's diverse populations through partnerships and contracts with other government agencies and private businesses. People throughout India who do not have reliable universal proof of identity, it is hard to reach, but it is essential to reach, because in that scene we will be able to identify each and every person. Key takeaways: by May 2017, 90% of the Indian population had received a unique proof of identity through Aadhaar program. First point here, organizations were incentivized to participate in enrolling people in Aadhaar. Additional government involvement was necessary to ensure that remote and marginalized residents also benefit from the program. Second, as an identification system that would benefit India's poor and marginalized, the program needed to reduce barriers to enrollment, including setting a broad list of identity and address documentation requirements. Third, to bring enrollment to hard-to-reach residents, local partners were recruited and empowered to conduct active reach and target specific hard-to-reach communities. Fourth, Aadhaar cards were delivered to many of India's residents by leveraging India Post extensive network, which is capable of reaching individuals without a fixed address. For cards not successfully delivered, online portals and call center services are available for follow-up. Fifth, Aadhaar aims to provide Indian residents with access to a variety of services and benefits. The ability to access services and benefits through Aadhaar has been an important driver of demand for enrollment. Now, next case study is about providing urban amenities to rural areas, addressing rural poverty in India. So basically we know there is this divide between urban and rural, and the major division is that not all infrastructure or other facilities are available in the rural areas, compared to the urban ones. So over 2/3 of India's population still lives in rural areas, and rural poverty remains a significant policy concern. Many people migrate from India's rural to urban areas in search of better economic opportunities, providing urban amenities to rural areas. PURA. So this is the full form. Was a rural development public-private partnership program which took a holistic approach to provide more services and opportunities to India's hardest to reach areas, right? So PURA. Well, rural Indians without access to urban services and opportunities were hard to reach, but that is the target. Key takeaways: despite its innovative design, PURA never made it past its pilot phase. Although PURA was unsuccessful, there are still several key takeaways from the research. First one, the PURA experience was marked by the Indian government's internal inefficiencies. The program was only successful in limited, piecemeal circumstances. States were reluctant to relinquish their autonomy over development projects that eliminated their power to influence and benefit from these processes and meant they would receive a smaller budget for use in projects that could ensure their re-election. PURA teaches us the importance of considering that actors will lose with reforms and if there is any way of compensating them for such losses. Second, a private entity may have been more effective than other Pura initiatives because it was not led by or dependent on dysfunctional bureaucracies. This ability to bypass dysfunctional government institutions can allow for greater speed and efficiency in service delivery. It also insulates initiatives from being directly influenced by a change in government or by other political presses. Third, where Pura projects have succeeded, there has been an individual group or institution that has firmly dedicated itself to that initiative. A lack of continuity in leadership appears to be a common reason that Pura and other development projects cease to operate in India. Sustaining ownership over a project for an extended time, even when leadership shifts, is an important component of a successful long-term initiative. Right? Fourth, strong top-down leadership may not be sufficient in many instances. Community empowerment is also key to success. Interviewees repeatedly stress that bottom-up initiatives driven by local populations that are sensitive to their specific needs tend to have greater impacts. Now, moving on to the Unit 2, implementation at national level. We'll see some examples here. National Action Plan on Climate Change, NAPCC, and National Health Mission, NHM, are examples of national level policies and programs aimed at achieving the SDGs. For each program, a brief description of the program, its objectives, and how it contributes to the SDGs. So, NAPCC is a policy framework developed by the Government of India to address the challenges of climate change. The NAPCC was first launched in 2008, and it outlines the actions that the government will take to mitigate and adapt to the impacts of climate change. The NAPCC is based on 8 national missions, which are National Solar Mission. This mission aims to promote the use of solar energy in India and to make it a major source of power by 2020. Point 2, National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency. This mission aims to improve energy efficiency in various sectors such as industry, buildings, and appliances. Third, National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem. This mission aims to protect and conserve the unique biodiversity of the Himalayan region. Fourth, National Water Mission. This mission aims to improve water management and conservation in India. The fifth, National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture. This mission aims to increase agricultural productivity and resilience to climate change impacts. Sixth, National Mission for Green India. This mission aims to increase the country's forest cover and improve the ecological status of forests. Seventh, we have National Mission for Sustainable Habitat. This mission aims to promote sustainable urban and rural development. Eighth, and the last one here, is National Mission on Strategic Knowledge for Climate Change. This mission aims to enhance the country's capacity to respond to climate change through research, education, and trade. The National Action Plan on Climate Change is an ambitious policy framework which aims to address the impacts of climate change in India through a multi-pronged and sectoral approach. The NAPCC is regularly updated to reflect the progress made and to align with the new global climate agreements and goals. Here we have a document. This is a PIB, Press Information Bureau's release by Ministry of Finance, Government of India. India follows a holistic approach towards its 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So this document is available over internet. You see the source over here in the bottom. You can download and read through this. It mentions, like a number of initiatives and missions. Namami Gange mission is mentioned over here. You can see National Clean Air Program, National Policy on Resource Efficiency, etc. Yeah. Now let's see some national reports. National reports on SDGs. National reports provide an overview on the progress made in achieving the SDGs in India. These reports are usually published by the government or research institutes and provide a detailed analysis of the progress made in each of the SDGs. First one, NHM, National Health Mission. So we saw previously the benefits of this: rural health mission, urban health mission, health mission on Ayush, right? Reproductive, maternal, newborn, child and adolescent health, communicable diseases control, CDC, non-communicable disease control, NCD, health system strengthening, HSS, etc. So these are the initiatives from government to enhance the national health mission. Then we have NVR, National Voluntary Review. So NVR is this report which we The government actually prepares and submits to United Nations. That's an exhaustive document which talks about like successes and failures in achieving SDGs. So NVR report is a document submitted by Government of India to the UN outlining the country's progress towards achieving the SDGs. The NVR report provides a detailed overview of the policies, programs and actions taken by the government to achieve the SDGs. The NVR report is a self-assessment document which is prepared by the government and submitted to UNDP for review. The report is intended to provide a detailed account of India's progress towards achieving SDGs. The NVR report includes a detailed analysis of the program made in all 17 SDGs, and it also includes an analysis of the challenges and gaps that need to be addressed. Next, we have SDG India Index Baseline Report, which was published in year 2018. This report is about the SDG India Index 2018, which measures progress of states and union territories in achieving SDGs. It includes 62 priority indicators to measure performance on 17 goals. Key outputs include index scores for each state, UT, based on their performance. The Indian model of SDG localization. Localization is another very important like a task over here, because there are local challenges which needs like addressal locally, right? So inputs we can definitely take from anywhere, global, national, but it requires like implementation strategies which suits like a local like a considerance. The report documents the experiences of localizing SDGs in India and distills lessons learned from it. It also provides a guide to understanding how global goals can be translated into local actions benefiting all countries on their journey towards achieving 2030 agenda. NITI Aayog published the first edition of SDG India Index and Dashboard Baseline Report, which encapsulates social, economic and environmental parameters with 247 indicators under its framework. In partnership with UN, NITI Aayog documented learnings from this process in 2019, titled Localizing SDGs, Early Lessons from India. This document extends that work by providing more nuanced understandings about these learnings for other states to engage in peer learning as well. Finance Commission has noted progress made on several targets along with challenges faced while doing so through its recently submitted report. Well, for its conclusion, in conclusion, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are a global call to action to end poverty, protect the planet and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity. India is committed to achieving these goals and has taken several steps towards this end. The National Action Plan on Climate Change (NAPCC) is one such initiative which focuses on addressing the challenges posed by climate change through a comprehensive and integrated approach. India has also submitted its National Voluntary Report (NVR) report, which highlights the progress made by the country towards achieving the SDGs. The National Health Mission (NHM) is also an important initiative aimed at providing accessible, affordable and quality health care to all citizens. In order to achieve the SDGs, it is important for all stakeholders to work together and take collective action. The government, private sector, civil society and individuals all have a role to play in ensuring that India becomes a sustainable and equitable society. So this is this map you can see over here. This is a map which represents like scores attained by different states of India. So this is publicly available on the NITI Aayog's website. If you go under like this head, okay, India, and this belongs to year 2022. You can see the median here 66 achieved by India. And the green ones are the like leader ones. You can see different states, and the yellow ones are like a performer ones, right? So fortunately there are no states in red zone, but definitely this central like a zone requires like a much more focus, so that collectively it can grow. So it's a very unique phenomena which is happening in this central area across the length and breadth of India, that like all of these are under like a yellow category, right? So in the next lecture we will hear more about like a different states and other like reports at national level by NITI Aayog, right? So with this we have come to the end of like today's lecture. Thank you all for joining. See you in the next one.